Welcome to the System Center Configuration Manager Solution Template technical discussion. If you're looking for a window on the health of the computers in your organization, or you're looking for an inventory of the software across the machines in your System Center instance, or you're looking for how well your computers are protected or how they might be infested with malware, the System Center Configuration Manager Solution Template provides a rich set of analytics on top of the information inside your Configuration Manager database. In today's discussion, we're going to go through the reports that are available, and then we're going to dive into a bit of the technical detail about how the solution template works, how an agent is installed to read information from your System Center Configuration Manager database, and how it sends that data into a separate destination database, and how a set of Power BI reports is bound to that database. Okay, let's start with a look at the reports that the System Center Configuration Manager Solution Template provides. Now before I get started, let's just back up a bit and consider what's possible with Configuration Manager. When we started out in this effort to create a solution template for Configuration Manager, I was something new. I'd heard of the tool, but I wasn't that familiar with it. And the more I became familiar with Configuration Manager, the more I was just amazed at the data that's in there and what you can do with it. I had no idea that the kind of insight it provided on all of the machines inside the network, not only the software that was installed there, but the malware that was installed there, the updates that had been shipped out, and the ones that had failed to install, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just, for old Configuration Manager hands, this is not new, but for people that are just a little familiar or not familiar at all with what's possible with the information inside there, it's just amazing. Okay, so let's take a look at this first dashboard, which is really a window on the health of the computers and the mobile devices in your organization. So on the top left, we see the total number of clients, the total number of users. Sadly, this information is washed a bit or cleansed for demo purposes. It was stemmed from a real, very large implementation of Configuration Manager, but for legal reasons, I had to clean it up, so it's not as insightful as it might be, but it's still pretty good. So for client types, for example, we lost the mobile devices. We just show all the computers. But take a look at the bottom. You can now take a look at the clients by operating system. How many on Windows 10? And then, the great capabilities of Power BI, you can see all of the other visualizations change when you start clicking on the different operating systems. So you can now slice the health of the computer, slice on your operating system type, and very easily see the health, malware, software, et cetera, by OS. Health evaluation status, this is that agent that Configuration Manager pushes out to all the devices in the organization. You can see which ones have succeeded and failed. The current health evaluation. Now, interesting thing here is what Configuration Manager does is tell you right now what percentage of active computers are healthy. What the solution template does is and we'll get into the detail in a bit later in this presentation, but what the solution template does is we put an agent on a machine, and we pull information every day from the Configuration Manager database, so we can show a trend of health over time. You can set a goal, and then we compare that to the goal and keep history for as long as you wish, and we can just show the trend, so things are getting better and things are getting worse. The other thing is when you start showing this to old System Center hands and they see the trends, you can point back at what happened there, and they'll shake their heads and say, oh, that was the day that such and such happened. And it gives provides that rich history to other people that may not be as familiar with your organization. Endpoint compliance, there's a set of rules about what does it mean to be for a computer to be compliant. We measure that as well over time. The number of computers that are endpoint compliant, as well as the percentage of the total, And then we've got some other key metrics about the real-time protection enabled, which is a system-centered term, not something I'm inventing, as well as the number of machines that have their antivirus enabled and the anti-spyware enabled. Over here, a current malware count. This is how many machines and how much malware is infected on those machines. And so just the low number of 1, and then we can see that count, that trend by date. Again, something that the solution template provides. It doesn't come with doesn't come with System Center, that we can see the trends of how that thing changes over time. And so we can slice on the malware severity. So we say severe and changes a bit, medium changes a lot. Okay, let's go back to all of them. And this is the current number of current computers with missing updates. So then later on, we'll show you how to get a list of what those computers are, and then you can act on that information. So, why are updates failing to go on those machines? You can do something. And this is the missing updates that they're missing from those 1,494 missing updates on the 609 machines. Okay, so lots of information. But this is the summary page. Let's dig into the detail a bit. On the protection, we can see a much more informative trends of the various key metrics of how machines are protected in your system center, your configuration manager implementation, the endpoint compliance, the number of machines, the percentage of machines, the number of machines, and how the trends over time. The antivirus enabled chart and other key metrics, real-time protection enabled, IO protection, behavior monitor enabled, as well as anti-spyware. Malware page. Here we see a larger graph that was on that summary page. We see a larger graph of the malware that was counted, and then we distinguish between the malware that was found and the malware that was found and was unable to be resolved. So the machines that are still infected with malware, we show a trend. We show trends over time as well. And the malware categories, and you can drill in. So let me just drill down to the next level. So we actually look at the specific Trojans and that are present in your implementation. The remediation type, what happens when malware is discovered? Was it quarantined or no action taken? And also by OS. And here is a list of machines that are infected with malware that you can take and that you can act on. Okay. Update compliance. This is similar. We can take a look at, so you schedule updates to be pushed out to your network, and we can count the number of computers that didn't get those updates and trend those over time. Here are the list of computers with missing updates, and we take a look at the bulletin ID. And the nice thing here, we can actually click on the link to get information on that update. This might mean something to configuration manager experts. And here are the updates by, again, the breakdown by OS, a list of the bulletins, and then the missing updates by bulletins. You can see which are the updates that are most prevalently missing from your organization. And then, of course, we can pick on a particular machine and see everything about updates on that machine, or you can select a particular bulletin and see everything about where that bulletin is missing on machines in your implementation. So cool stuff. However, my favorite is the software inventory. Now, again, sadly, this information is cleaned up a bit from an actual configuration manager database. What this is ostensibly for is if you want to true up some licensing, and you want to say how many, for example, how much of SQL Server Enterprise do you have in your organization? Maybe somebody's implemented it without your knowledge. You can get, or you just want to get a handle, get a grip on where it's installed. You can do this, and now you can see that I've typed SQL, and we get a list of all the SQL products. And if we want to take a look at, let's just click this one, for example, we can slice and we can see what machines that software is. That software is actually installed on. Okay, that's pretty interesting. But the other thing you can do is some interesting stuff is, for example, when we first collected this information, I was wondering how many people have installed Steam on their machines. Well, you can find that out. My favorite game, Age of Empires. How many people still are playing Age of Empires on their work machine? Well, you can find that out too. So lots of cool information in the set of reports that come with the System Center Configuration Manager solution template. So now let's dive into the detail and just find out how to install this thing, how it's configured, how it runs, and how you might want to change it. So really interesting set of reports. Let's talk a bit about where you can get it and how to install. So if I go back to this page, to install it, just go to powerbi.com under Solution Templates. Let's see a number of the solution templates that have been published to date. And the one we're talking about today is System Center Configuration Manager, this one. So click on Learn More. You can see that report I just showed by clicking on this button, so I won't do that again. There's a 2-minute introductory demo to the reports here. So this is the short version of today's discussion. And to actually install it, press this button. Now, the Configuration Manager solution template is an on-premise one. That means the information is on an on-premise SQL server. So we have an MSI installer for this solution template. So click the download button, launch the resultant download with admin credentials, and you're going to see this. And this is the actual Windows installer. So we just close the background so we go distracted. And this is going to step by step just take you through a few pages. First, I have to collect the credentials for the Configuration Manager database to be able to pull that information. Then we're going to ask for some credentials for the destination. The destination could be an Azure SQL DB or another on-premise SQL server. And everything that's required is installed on the machine, and we install an agent that is kicked off by the task scheduler that is run once a day to pull that information using the credentials you've provided. So let's go through it. Let's click the next button and hit the information about where the Configuration Manager database is installed. So I'm going to log in as myself. I don't have to. We could provide different credentials than the person logging in. I'm just going to use my own. And you validate. We try to validate everything at each step of the way so it doesn't fail. It doesn't fail at runtime. Let's just give that a minute to do its thing. And here we select the database, the Configuration Manager database. So if I select something that isn't a Configuration Manager database and I try to go next, it's going to tell me can't do that. So that's the error you're going to see. That's the error you're going to see if it's not a Configuration Manager database. So let's pick one that is this. Let's pick this one and try validate again, and then click next, and it should pass. Okay, so now we've provided the credentials for the source configuration management database. Now some queries are going to be run against that, and the results, the data sets that are the results of those queries are pushed to a destination database. And here I'm providing those credentials. And just for the sake of this demo, I'm going to use the same server. Using Windows authentication, I could provide use SQL auth credentials. I'll use Windows authentication, and they'll select the database where I want the results to go. This is the database that the Power BI report will be bound to. And let's put this in this test database. There's some parameters to enter. Data retention, this is how long data is kept for history purposes. In the Power BI report, there are a couple of the visualizations that track how the information changes over time. So the data retention by default 120 days, which should be fine even for very large installations. Only change this if you want to keep data for longer. 4 months. It's typically okay, but you can change it if you want. And there's some targets. Endpoint compliance target can be set to 90%. Let's just change this. Same with health evaluation target. Evaluation, click next. And we've got all the information we need to get going. So I can now click run to launch. What happens now is some scripts are deployed to that destination database. SQL, if SQL tools are installed, if they're not already installed on the target machine. And then on step 6, we create a task in Task Scheduler, and we kick it off. And once we kick it off, we wait for data to start pulling, and it's actually running right now. So this, what I've run it against is it's actually a pretty large instance, and it's actually a very large instance. It's going to take a while to bring the data across. So we'll just wait for a few rows to come across to show you what it looks like. Okay, you can see that updates are coming in, sites are coming in, and we could leave this up as long as we want. Now, one thing you'll need to do is click this download PBIX button. What this does is downloads, what this does is download a PBIX file that is bound to that destination database that was just configured. So when we open that file, all we need to do is refresh, and it will pull that information and show you the reports against your configuration manager database, much like the one I showed you at the beginning of this video. Let's open that file and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So this is the one that was just downloaded. Now if I apply the changes, it will connect to that same SQL database, be it on-premise or an Azure SQL DB, and pull in the information that was collected. It may ask for credentials, in which case enter the credentials that are required to be able to connect. But that's it. That's it. Okay, let's take a look at how that task is run that pulls the information from your configuration manager database and injects it into the target SQL destination. Now, what you're looking at is the folder where the files for the solution template are dropped under Program Data, Business Platform, Solution Templates, Microsoft SCCM template. And you can see the PowerShell script that is launched and the collection of SQL statements that comprise pulling data out of the configuration manager database. Now, the first thing is, let's take a look at how that PowerShell is launched. And it's launched from Task Scheduler. And let's just run that and take a look at how Task Scheduler runs it. So here is the actual solution template task. You can see that is kicked off daily, and here is the command line that's run. If you want to change how often this is run, you can do it from here. If you want to change it when it's run, you can also do it from here. Okay, let's go back to the folder. Here's the PowerShell. But before I open that, let's just take a look at let's take a look at these SQL statements. And if I copy that SQL statement, and let's just run it against my configuration management database. So it's pretty straightforward. This is these are the queries, the collection of queries that are run from the PowerShell script. The data is then pushed out to the target database. So simple enough. Let's now take a look at the PowerShell itself. There's only one thing of interest with the PowerShell, and that is how those queries are run. And see that this is a hash table that has the name of the query and the target table in the destination database where it is injected. So the site SQL, that query is then pushes the data to site staging, update staging, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you want to change a query, what you'll need to do is also change where that data winds up in the destination database. That's really the only thing of interest in here. You can take a look through this code, but I don't expect any changes to the PowerShell. Would have to be made by somebody who wants to make a change to the solution table, except for this little snippet. Last thing I want to take a look at is the database used by the solution template, the destination database that is configured when the solution template is provisioned. If you remember, when I provisioned the solution template, I pushed it into, I used my Scratch database. And here are the collection of tables that are created. And for each object that we pull out of the configuration manager database, we typically have a staging table and then the table itself. So here's computer staging, where the data is first pushed from that PowerShell script that's launched from test scheduler. And then there's a stored procedure. There's a stored procedure, in this case, SP populate computer, that takes the data out of the staging table and then merges it with the computer table. So you can take a look at this computer staging table. It's empty, of course. It's only used during the when the data is being pulled from the configuration manager database and then pushed up into this target database. And we can take a look at here. Let's just take a look at briefly take a look at the stored procedure that merges the results. Now it's pretty simple enough. This one uses a merge statement that takes the results of the query that pulls the information about computers from the configuration manager database and merges it into the from computer staging, and then merges it into the actual computer table. And you can browse through each one of these things, each one of these tables. The stored procedure is pretty straightforward of taking the data from each one of those staging tables and marrying that with the contents of the actual table that the Power BI file is bound to. Well, that's it. What we did was took a look at the reports in the System Center Configuration Manager Solution Template. Took a look at how it's provisioned. Go to powerbi.com under Solution Templates, get the installer and download it and run it. Took a look at the PowerShell test scheduler and how that kicks off the PowerShell script. Took a look at the PowerShell script itself that's kicked off and how that takes queries, each one of those queries, and populates a staging table and merges it into the tables in the destination database. And we took a look at how the Power BI file is bound to that database that is provisioned. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you can play with it and appreciate any feedback. if you're really interested in this, go visit us, check out everything on the GitHub repository, and look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for listening.